What's good, y'all? Welcome back to the Titans Rundown. I am your host, Micah McCamey, and we are joined back with a special guest from a few months ago. You may remember him, Drew Shea. How you doing?
I'm great, Micah. Thanks for having me today.
Of course. So, I think most people could probably take a guess of why you brought me in here, but I'll go ahead and spell it out anyway. So, Will Levis had a pretty serious injury on Sunday. So I wanted to see like what your thoughts were on the injury.
Well, when I saw the injury, like everyone else initially, it looked extremely bad. I mean, it just didn't look. Obviously, he was in a lot of pain. The injury looked. He was uh, kind of twisted around awkwardly, which could lead to a lot of different injuries, whether it was the knee, the hip, or the ankle. Wasn't sure at the time, but it was later. Obviously, everyone knows by now that it was uh, an ankle-related injury, and fortunately, it didn't become a long-term issue. However, from the diagnosis that was done, and I'm sure the Titans medical staff immediately uh, started the testing and all the diagnostic testing, and I'm sure it confirmed that he had what was considered the high ankle sprain, which to a lot of people all that means is, well, it's a sprained ankle, but those are significant. Um, Sometimes you can continue with those. Most of the time, it creates or it presents a problem where you have to take some time off. My guess with a high ankle sprain, which Will Levis apparently sustained with the situation the Titans are under, without knowing for sure or being around him at all, typically those are going to take a few weeks to heal. With them being in a position where they're out of the playoff race, I'm sure they're facing a difficult decision on whether to play him or not. I'm sure he wants to play, but my guess is he won't play this week or the remaining weeks to allow that to heal properly.
All right. So, um, f- fans are speculating a lot right now about Will Levis's injury, and they're saying that he could very well be out for the season. Do you think that that may be true, or?
Well, again, as I mentioned, those if it's a true high ankle sprain, my guess is he will have difficulty planting on the foot, moving laterally on that foot, bouncing up and down on that foot to step into his throws. Uh, I think that, and I know it's important that he plays to gain the experience for the future because he appears to be the future of the Titans, at least for the time being. But I would think that it would be in the best interest of him and the organization that he doesn't play. Again, but who knows what will happen this week during rehab, during treatment. Um, they play Sunday. Again, I would think he's definitely going to be listed as questionable. I would think you're going to see him become doubtful by the end of the week. So, with that being said, if he doesn't play this week, my guess is he probably won't play the remainder of the regular season.
Yeah, I honestly completely agree. I don't want to see him for the rest of the season. Not because he's bad, but because we need to reserve our future and whatnot. But I remember like whenever we saw that injury, we had about the same reaction that you did. Like the whole like area just went silent, except for one dude a few rows up that was yelling at Jalen Duncan. But I digress. Um, yeah. So thank you for the update.
Sure, sure. But again, I think that if you look at it long term, he will return from this injury. I would not anticipate him having any issues down the road. He'll be under great care. I think that the future is positive for Will Levis. I think he's quite a competitor. It sounded like he would do anything he can to get back on the field, but I'm sure the medical team will do the right thing.
And that's why we love him.
Mhm.
you know, it's great to have a quarterback that is fighting tooth and nail to come back.
I would agree.
All right, so let's get on with the rest of today's episode because that was kind of embarrassing, honestly. I mean, I want to hear what Mr. Shea thinks about this, but to me at least, that may have been the most embarrassing loss this season. I don't think it's close.
Well, the Titans have obviously there's issues with their team and in many areas. Their offensive line has struggled. That's no secret. I mean, they've had opportunities. I don't know. The Colts game earlier in the year was maybe comparable with the special teams mishaps that they had to lose. Although the Colts are a quality team, they had that game pretty well sealed away or had opportunities to win. And then they turn around and they beat a really good Dolphins team. Although they trailed the majority of the game, they were able to really continue to play hard and win the game. It gives you confidence. And then you come into a game where you're playing a injury riddled Texans team, expecting to win at home and having the early lead. The defense gets you an early lead with a pick six, and you think you're in a good position, and they just couldn't sustain the running game. They couldn't get the ball moving on the ground, and if you can't run the ball with a lead in the NFL, you're going to struggle. And that's what happened.
Yeah. Um. I, that Colts game was really embarrassing whenever I was watching it because I had completely predicted the Titans to just. I was expecting it to be close, but I was thinking, Gardner Minshew's starting, Will Levis is starting for us now, unlike the first time that we played them. And I was thinking, we're going to go in here and we're going to get a big win.
Yeah,
That did not
and that's an
happen.
important entry.
And it was
That's a
even.
very
Go
interdivisional
ahead.
game. You have to win when you can. Important game.
Yeah. So, I remember, because now I think about it, if Ryan Tannehill would have known how to hold an extra point attempt, we would have won that game. Like,
Probably a much greater chance, yes.
yeah, that was the embarrassing part about that game was the special teams was so bad that it got our special teams coordinator fired.
Mhm. Well, you hate to
And
see
then
that, but
and then ironically what happened the next week was we won the game because of a blocked field goal from earlier on.
that's correct. Yeah, there's been some. They've been in positions to have a little run here with some of these recent games. I mean, they certainly didn't start out well, and then they started getting the running game going a little bit more, and they were playing well enough on defense, and Hopkins starting to come along and develop and getting a little bit of some chemistry with Levis, and then it just didn't. This week just sort of let the air out of the sails, I guess you could say.
Yeah. So, sorry, Mr. Shea, if I get a little aggressive here, but this is just something I was very passionate about
Okay.
walking out of the game yesterday, and it's still something, or 2 days ago now, and it's still something that I feel really passionate about. I've been defending Tim Kelly all season, our offensive coordinator, because I feel like that he has done a lot more with the Titans offense than was expected. But that was the worst play calling I have seen by Tim Kelly by far. That was like Downing level bad. Like it was horrible to me at least. I want to hear your thoughts on the
Well,
offensive play
to be honest,
calling.
yeah, honestly, I saw bits and pieces of the second half. Um, I was able to watch the entire first half, which again, there wasn't a lot of offensive production. Defense helped out. Defense played well. So I really can't make form an opinion on what exactly went on in the game on Sunday in the second half, other than the fact that I came home and found out that they had lost the game, where I was extremely surprised that they had lost the game from what I saw in the first half. But if you want to lead back into the last few games, yeah, you're right. I mean, they again, they have shown some signs of improvement in the passing game. I think Levis is starting to get a handle on the game, the NFL, the speed of the game, the timing routes, the things that he's doing much better. I mean, he still has growing pains, but the bottom line, the offensive, their inability to run the football is just in the NFL. You can't survive, and they're not able to run the football. And the Titans have always made their best teams were the teams that could run the football. And you have Derrick Henry, and you have people that can block. They were able to keep teams off balance, and they were able to control the clock and things of that nature. And now they just really can't. I think Derrick Henry has had he's obviously he's there's not many holes to run through. I'm sure there's some frustration on his part, and he's not getting any younger. And he can't. He has to. He may need a little more room to run, and he's just not finding it, and that's making it very difficult. And the teams run loading the box, and there's nothing they can do. So again, I can't really form an opinion as like you have on Coach Kelly, and that's okay. I just don't. I can't really be accurate on what I would say because I did not see the majority of the game on Sunday.
Fair enough. So, um, so also, I feel like that core, the coordinator situation is in a very weird place right now. Because Tim Kelly, I can't tell if he's good. I think he's decent, but he doesn't have the pieces to make everything that he wants to work.
You're right,
And
and you really
go
do
ahead.
need no, you really do need to have two in the NFL. I mean, obviously, you have to have. I really like Spears. I think he's going to be fantastic for this team moving forward. I mean, he provides a threat that they haven't really had. I mean, they've had McNichols and so forth, but this guy, he's a whole different player. I think he's NFL ready. He adds a lot on third downs, catches the ball well, and can do some things that they haven't been able to do. But in the NFL, you've got to be able to have two receivers. You got to have a possession guy. You got to have a deep threat, and they just don't have the pieces on offense. And of course, again, it all starts back with the offensive line. And you got to give them time. You got to be able to balance, keep balance between run and pass, and they just don't. It's just not there. And then again, in years past, you've had help from production from tight ends. I did see I was reading one of the projections for next year. I think Titans have got to look at getting a tight end for next year. I would think that's very important. Besides the offensive line, I don't know what you think about that, but tight end can look at what's going on around the NFL with tight ends right now. Look how many tight ends are teams' leading receivers. I mean, look at not just the Travis Kelce's, but more and more tight ends are emerging at the goal lines and third down situations. That the tight ends are becoming such a huge part of the passing game that 10 years ago they were just another blocker. So I think that Titans need to be thinking about that moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that our offense has the potential to cook up an absolute masterclass next year if our front office does the right things. Like at first it starts out with the O line. I don't know how that's going to happen. I'll save that for how I would want that to happen. They've already heard my point of view, but I would like to hear yours on that. Um, we also need work in the receiver core because our third best receiver is probably Chris Moore, which is not a good thing because he's just been a veteran that's been hopping around and having like 300-yard years. Like that's
Right.
not a good sign.
Right, right. Well, if you just look back through the history of the NFL, or at least over the last 15 years, the game changes all the time. I mean, you used to have, and this may be a little off subject. At one time you had to have 1,000 yard rusher, had to have it. Next, 5 years later, you have to have a 6'5", a Julio Jones type of wide receiver, someone that Megatron, those kind of guys that had to play. You had to have a big, tall receiver. Then we go to the short, quick passing game with the small, fast receivers. The game changes all the time, and then now we've got tight ends that are becoming almost like another wide receiver. I just think the Titans, it seems like they're always a step behind the trend when it comes to building their offense. And I don't know if that's the coordinator. I don't know where that, what the front office wants to do moving forward. But it seems like a lot of these successful teams that you're watching in the NFL, they're scoring a lot of points. And that wasn't the case 5 years ago. You had to win with defense and running game and throw on third down and compete, keep the clock moving. Now teams are putting 40 plus points on the board. Who would have ever thought NFL games would be played in the 40s? It's not always enjoyable for the purist like me. I love to watch play. I love to watch defense. I like to watch field position. I like to watch the smart, the strategies that go into it. But I just feel like the Titans are just right now. They've got a lot to build on they got a lot of things to figure out offensively moving forward. I mean, there's teams with below average defenses that are winning 9 and 10 ball games at this point of the season right now because they're able to do things on offense. That's just the way the game has become and what's become now. So to answer your question, what do I think about moving forward with them? They've got to I mean, again, going and getting Hopkins in the offseason, that was a smart move. That's a game changer. Unfortunately, they've had so many injuries, they haven't been able to utilize him maybe as much as they want to. But at least they went out and saw that as an important piece of the team. But they've got to find more pieces like that.
100%. I feel like that the reason that we were so behind for a few years there was a big part of that was to me at least, our disaster of a GM known as John Robinson.
Yeah, well, I'll let you kind of elaborate on that a little bit. That's right in your wheelhouse. You have been with this. You know more about the front office maybe than anyone else I know. So you can tell me what you think about that. If I turn the tables on you a little bit.
Oh my. Okay. So, um, there were some really awful moves that he made. Not even just in the draft, but like in free agency too. Like he drafted Adoree Jackson, a defensive back that isn't even playing for us anymore, over Tre'Davious White, who has been one of the best defensive backs in the NFL for the Buffalo Bills over the past few years. Um, we also got to talk about how he drafted, like, he had that one good draft that kept his job. It was that 2019 draft where he drafted Jeffrey Simmons, AJ Brown, Amani Hooker,
Hmm.
and David Long Jr., who all ended up becoming capable starters for us.
All very good players. I
Yeah,
hated to see
if it
David Long
wasn't,
go, but it is what it is. He's playing with the Dolphins now. I love to
yeah,
watch his. I love his energy. I love the way he played. High
he was
energy.
great. A-
Yes.
And if it wasn't for those four guys, John Robinson would have been out of a job a lot sooner. I mean, don't even get me started about him drafting Isaiah Wilson in the first round, who played three total snaps in the NFL.
Right.
Like, that's a real stat that I wasn't expecting.
Yeah.
He also drafted Caleb Farley. Now, I'm not going to dig too much into him because he's been through a lot of things over the past few years, and I don't want to, get into that. But um, then he also made the worst trade in franchise history by trading away AJ Brown basically for Traylon Burks and Nicholas Petit Frere.
Yeah. It's hard to understand that one, especially if you look at where they are now. I mean, AJ Brown's one of the most dominating wide receivers in the NFL, and he was when he was a Titan, and he's continued to sustain that. And I know there were issues when he was trying to address the other areas, but we just to leave the wide receiving core as vacant as it made it. Boy, you can't help but look at that one and shake your head. I think a lot of people feel the same way about that one.
Yeah, I tried to be optimistic about it. Did not work out.
Yeah.
Like, and then I'm not too sure if we would have gotten him if we would have kept AJ. But imagine what he would be doing with Will Levis right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, certainly you wouldn't have Hopkins on your team if you had AJ Brown, most likely. But you're right. You still have those two if they had time to work together, and in the off season and create a rhythm together. That would have been pretty impressive to watch. It was fun to watch. To think about how good, much better it would make Derrick Henry if he had a passing game. But again, I'm going to go back to what I said in the beginning. The O line, D line are the keys to your team, and they just don't have the offensive linemen. And it's unfortunate. I mean, they're hard to find. I know there's a lot of teams that struggle, don't have offensive lines. And I mean, I've been watching other games, and I was watching the Cowboys and the Bills on Sunday, and the Cowboys have been just absolutely dominant on offense. They have been unstoppable with Dak Prescott, the running game and the passing game. And Buffalo, who's sort of been struggling defensively, came out and just absolutely controlled the line of scrimmage and ran through the Cowboys' offensive line. And I mean, Dak spent the majority of the game on his back. So again, it just shows if your offensive line isn't playing well. I mean, they had what 85, 90 yards of total offense going to the fourth quarter, lowest in their history or in the last 25 years. So it just shows if your offensive line can't keep the defense off the quarterback, you got a lot of problems.
Yeah. Um. So just real quick. So to round out this episode, I'm gonna ask you what so I'm gonna ask Mr. Shea what he thinks would be best for the draft. Um. And we also will look into next week's schedule, and then you'll get to hear about his and my socials. But anyway, um, let's move on. So, I just gotta ask, what do you think we should do at the draft? Because you don't need to give me any names; just give me positions.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's obvious they may have to dip in more of the free agency to build an offensive line. I mean, there's always, they went out and drafted an offensive lineman in the first round this past year. Do you repeat that again? Obviously, that's a need. As I mentioned earlier, the tight end position is completely vacant. They need a tight end. I was reading somewhere in one of the projections today that they had Brock Bowers as a potential about the time for the Titans to draft. If he would be a great addition to the team, not without mentioning names, but he's obviously the best tight end in college football. He was a prototypical NFL type of tight end that can George Kittle's type. Can run, has amazing hands, can do a lot of things for you. It's almost like having an extra receiver. So I think tight ends have a huge need. Some of their defensive stars are getting older. I mean, let's face it, taking a lot of snaps. I know Simmons isn't old, but he's got a lot of miles. So you got to be thinking about the interior lines on both sides, really. So that's where you got to go. I think those are the areas that are of most need and they're the hardest to fill. And it's hard also, though, to bring in an offensive lineman and expect him to start right off the bat and be a factor. But you got to start somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty on track with you and what you want because, like, I want a left tackle in the first, a receiver in the second. Deal with the cornerback in free agency because I do not want a rookie cornerback leading that room. I just think
I
that would be a
agree.
bad idea where it
You
is
got to have
with
you
where
got to have
the
veteran corners.
Yeah,
and get them.
with
You can
where
find
the
them.
defensive with where the defensive backs are right now,
Right.
um, we can't we can't rely on a rookie to lead that room.
I would agree.
And in the third, I like you said, I want a project pass rusher. I I feel like that's what this team lacks personally on the defensive side. That and a cornerback.
Uh, the highest paid positions on the field, left tackle and corners, right? Well, I mean quarterbacks, but I mean the greatest demands for many years have been the left tackle and the corners. So you got to get guys that know what they're doing. They got to be able to play right away, and you have to pay them a lot of money.
For sure. Okay, so next week we play the Seahawks. So I think this would be obvious what the best prediction would be, but I would like to hear what you have to say.
Well, Seattle had an incredible win last night, a road win at Miami. Uh,
Uh,
a game that sort of looked like they didn't get off to a very good start, if I recall. I was just kind of following it a little bit, not complete, not too in depth, but they stayed in there defensively. Uh, I'm sorry, they beat the Eagles. I'm sorry,
there
the
you go.
Eagles last night. My fault. I knew it was
That's all right.
a high-powered offense, but they beat the Eagles last night on the road, which was an amazing win. Kept them in the playoff race. They were on the brink of elimination. Now I think I read today they're 7-7. Is that right?
That's
So they are
correct.
still mathematically alive. They're going to come. They're going to be excited to play. They got something to play for. Um, they are playing with a backup quarterback as well. Geno Smith's injured, or at least he was last night. They brought in a young, I don't know if he's a rookie, but a guy, a lesser named quarterback who managed the game very well. They ran the ball, threw the ball late, made a couple of big plays. Uh, DK Metcalf made a couple big plays late in the game and got them down there to win the game. I think that again, the Titans at this point they're so unpredictable. I think they're going to be able to They're going to run the football, and they can run the football. I think Seattle is a little bit vulnerable on the ground, but again, they're going to run the football. Keep the game manageable. Don't fall behind early. I think the Titans are gonna. I think again, we don't know the quarterback situation. Who's going to quarterback? I'm going to assume that Levis will not be playing. So number 17 is going to roll back out there, and let's see if he can will them to a victory. No pun intended.
Yep. So, yeah, I am not very optimistic about this game. Seattle is going to come in with their heads on fire they want to make sure that they can go get that playoff spot. Well, we don't have anything to play for. We'll be down in the dumps. We're going to run the ball, and I don't think it'll be a pretty game to watch. Drew Lock is going to line us up.
Drew Lock. Yes, that's right. Well, we'll see. That's who it was. I'm glad you reminded me of that. Drew Lock. We'll see. It is Christmas Eve. Will our Titans be looking forward to the Christmas holiday, or are they going to show up and play? Who knows?
Yeah, I feel really upset because I'm going to have to watch that game on Christmas Eve, and then I'm going to have to record either on Christmas Day or the day after Christmas.
Well, I hope it
So
doesn't ruin your Christmas dinner. That's all I got to say.
I hope not. So instead of being able to play with all my new toys or whatever I get for Christmas, I have to record this episode being like, dark times are ahead of us. The Titans are so bad. Like,
Uh, hey, it isn't life or death. It'll be okay. You'll survive. You've been down this road before. You'll bounce back like a good NFL team always does. They just bounce back. You'll bounce back too.
yep. Thank you for the encouraging words.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm too old to worry about things like this. I move on.
So now it's time to plug our social medias. So I have Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. They're all under the Titans Rundown. And for anyone that's listening on the podcast, I have a YouTube channel. Again, also titled The Titans Rundown. Mr. Shea, do you have any socials? Or
You know what, Micah? I've tried to. I have a few. I have, uh, I guess, Twitter, and of course the old Facebook. But I try to, I try to limit my social media time. But it's important to do it when you're passing off good information, which it has its advantages. So I do have a couple, but it sounds like I don't have as many as you do. But I need to, maybe, do I need to get more social media? I'm old. See, I'm an old dinosaur. I
I
still
mean,
read the newspaper, Micah. What do you think of that?
oh gosh, holy cow!
I'm old. I still have a house phone. What do you think of that? No, you don't. I'm joking.
Yeah. So, yeah, yeah. You don't need to get too many social medias. I'll be honest.
Okay.
I, I may look through Instagram every now and again, but usually I just post and I get off and go do something else with my time. But
My daughters have enough social media for all of us.
anyway, so I'm assuming that your socials are at Drew Shea.
That is correct.
All right. So if y'all want to go follow him on Twitter or Facebook, then you are completely welcome to.
Thank you.
But anyway, that's going to do it all for us. This has been a rundown of your terrible Tennessee Titans. I love
Better
y'all.
days ahead, Micah. Better days ahead.
Hopefully.
Yes.
I love y'all. And tighten up.
Bye, all. Okay.